One of the things about our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, oh, I'm just going to JV it. Like, let's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today, so thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property to be okay. Suddenly Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, our topic is falling in love with business acquisitions. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to like our channels. You can find our channel on YouTube, Facebook, and X. On each of those platforms, our handle is @InRemPodcast. That is @InRemPodcast. Also, you can download an audio version of the podcast. Go to Spotify, go to Apple, or any other major podcast platform. Download it, like it, leave us a review. Helps us out a ton. We would really appreciate it. With that, we're going to go to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So my legal update today is talking about the difference between a trust and a will. And I do some estate planning. And so on a regular basis, I receive phone calls from potential clients saying, I want to set up a will. I need you to draft a will. And so I ask, okay, well, why do you want a will? What are you trying to achieve? And they say, well, I'm trying to avoid probate. And so I need a will. And I unfortunately have to break it to them that a will doesn't avoid probate. And that's one of the main differences between a trust and a will, is that a trust will avoid probate. And if you set up your assets the right way and you die and you have your assets in a trust, there is no probate. But if you just do a will, which is basically a document saying where your assets go if you pass away, then you will have to do probate. So let's break down a few of the similarities and then we'll talk about the differences. So in both a trust and a will, you can set up the individuals who will basically manage your financial affairs if something happens to you. So in the trust, we call that a successor trustee. In a will, we call that either a personal representative or some states call it an executor. And those are the individuals who basically take over your finances and manage them. So they both do that. The second thing that both a trust and a will do is it allows you to basically designate who receives your assets if something happens to you. And so you can basically have provisions in there that says, my children. And then if something, God forbid, were to happen to one of my to a child, then it goes to their heirs or back to their siblings. And you can kind of set it up how you're going to do that. And both a trust and a will allows you to create those beneficiary designations. That's pretty much where the difference or the similarities stop. Now the differences. So one of the major differences is how you can deal with minors in both a trust and a will. And this is, to me, one of the main reasons why you want a trust other than avoiding probate is to deal with minors. So if in the will scenario, if you have minors as your beneficiary, say, so anyone under 18 years of age, and you were to pass away, the funds must be deposited with the court and a separate probate must be opened for the minor child and a conservator appointed for that minor child who manages the inheritance funds, and they will be on deposit with the court. And then every time access is needed to those funds, an application will need to be made to the court, and the court's going to have to approve it. So if the minor child needs a new laptop for school, for example, you're going to have to go into court. You're going to have to ask the court for approval to release those funds and then have it go to the minor child. Now, once that minor child turns 18, they can go into court and file their own petition and request that the conservatorship be terminated, that the probate be terminated, and that whatever is there in that account be paid to the minor without any restriction whatsoever. I don't know about you, but in my experience, most 18-year-olds do not know how to manage their own financial affairs, and that money probably will be gone, through one fun weekend in Vegas at some point. So, it's not the greatest thing to hand an 18-year-old a ton of money. Now, granted, some 18-year-olds are more responsible than others, but you're kind of, betting against the odds there. And versus a trust, if we talk about a trust, so the nice thing about a trust is you can say, okay, I'm going to have my successor trustee create a separate, what we call a testamentary trust, or I'm going to create a testamentary trust. And successor trustee is going to manage this testamentary trust, and they are going to have the authority to decide how those funds are used. So if the minor child needs a new laptop for school, they go to the successor trustee and say, hey, I need this new laptop. The successor trustee says, send me what you want. They send them the link. They go and they pay it right out of the trust funds, trust proceeds, and then the laptop is available for that minor to use. School tuition, same thing, yada, yada, yada. We can go through the whole list here, but bottom line is the successor trustee has all of this ability and discretion to make sure that the minor child is being taken care of without having to go into court and ask for permission. Then the funds don't have to be delivered to the child once they turn 18. You can put in there that maybe a portion is delivered at 18, or maybe none is delivered at 18. Maybe a portion is delivered at 25, or all is delivered at 25, or another portion at 30, or all at 30. You can have all these different combinations. And if you can think of it, it pretty much can be drafted that way, where the funds are released upon, the minor child reaching certain ages. And there could even be things like, you get a college degree and a certain amount is released. You join the military and have an honorable discharge, a certain amount is released. There could be these different triggers that can also allow certain funds to be released. So there's a lot you can do with a trust in planning and taking care of minor children or young adults that you can't do in the will scenario. And that's really the main difference between the two. In a will, you're stuck with probate. In a trust, you can avoid probate. And in a will, you don't have great provisions for your minor children or young adults. And in the trust, you can better plan for that scenario.
All right, Sean, thank you for the legal update. With that, an announcement. Every Tuesday at 3 p.m., we have the Creative Finance Collective. So make sure to join us this afternoon at 3 p.m. To discuss creative finance. We're here with other lawyers and professionals in the space to really just discuss the ins and outs, the benefits, the rewards, the liabilities, the risks associated with creative finance. And we get together with other lawyers in the space from different states to have a variety of different perspectives. But what we're there to do is answer live questions from you, the viewer. That's really what we're there for, is just to kind of engage with you all and talk through issues that you're running into with regard to creative finance. So it's important for you to be there. Certainly the videos are available after the fact, but to have you there live and ask the questions and deal with real world scenarios is really what we're looking for. So make sure to join us 3:00 p.m. Arizona time. That's Arizona time. Look forward to seeing you then. With that, we're going to go ahead and get into our topic today. We're talking about business acquisitions. That's why our show is called Falling in Love with Business Acquisitions. We wanted to talk about the ins and outs, what it's like to get into that process, what that process looks like. And with us to discuss that is investor and entrepreneur Abraham Gray. Abraham, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. Now that you've been on with us before, and we really appreciate that. For those who aren't familiar with you, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, some of your background, and how you got into doing what you do?
Yeah, so I've been in business since I was 15. I actually turned 50 this year, so it's been over 35 years now. I do a lot of real estate, I started doing real estate when I was 22, and do a whole lot of both. Do a whole lot of business and real estate since then. And of course, we've used you for different real estate transactions we've had in Georgia. Brian Fowler, actually, I work with him a bunch of times. So that's how we got to know each other better.
So, Abraham, I know our show is not really devoted to real estate, but since you brought it up, on the real estate investing side of thing, is there one particular strategy that you're kind of focusing on? I know every year kind of provides the market with different
Yeah.
opportunities, and what are you looking at right now?
When the market's really good, fix and flips are really good because everybody's trying to buy property. When the market like slows down and is not very good, then you get more into the buying and holding because you can buy stuff a lot cheaper. So then you just wait for it to appreciate and you rent it out in the meantime. Luckily the last 4 or 5 years, the market's been really hot. So been doing a lot of fix and flipping, but in between, I still do a whole lot of buy and holds. When the market's really weak, I pay cash for a lot of buy and holds because you could buy stuff really cheap. But when the market's really hot, it's hard to buy stuff very cheap. So the buy and holds that I buy when the market's hot are more creative type deals. So I'm buying a lot of subject to deals, a lot of owner finance deals, and those types of deals when the market's hot to keep as buy and holds. But the fix and flipping is where probably most of my time is spent and most of the money's made during these really good times.
Now, Abraham, I know when we discussed in the past when we've had you on, you were pretty prolific at trying to be involved with and organize conferences and business conferences. Are you still doing a good bit of that?
Yeah. So I started doing that back in 2020, and I still do them. I went from doing 1 a year to 2 a year to 3 a year, back to 2 and back to 1. Last year I did 1. This year I'm going to do at least 1. They're big events. We have a few hundred people that attend, and we teach everybody from A to Z everything about doing business. So I still do those. I really enjoy them. I still buy lots of businesses every single year. Lately, I bought a tree company here in Atlanta that cuts trees and does all that. And Atlanta has more trees than everywhere, so that we stay pretty busy. But I have all kinds of different businesses. I own a lot of gyms. I have a lot of entertainment, axe throwing. I have putt golf. I have escape rooms, cleaning companies, different, just all kinds of different things. I have trophy and engraving stores. And what I try to do is with the businesses that I have, the way to make business the most profitable is to buy competitors or buy like businesses. So that's my big target. Most of the businesses that I've been buying lately, I've just been buying competitors out in the area and then just growing my business overnight with all their customers, all their good employees and vendors and all that. That's my favorite thing as far as when I buy businesses.
Sure. So jumping into that topic, because that is our topic today, to talk about business acquisitions. Want to explore kind of a little bit how you got into it, but I just kind of want to know on the front end. There may be no way to know this off the top of your head, but what do you estimate is the amount of businesses that you've acquired since you got into doing this?
It's in the hundreds. It's probably between 300 and 400 businesses what I've had. As far as so a lot of those I've started. I don't really start businesses much anymore. It's way better to buy them. The types of businesses that I did start when I was starting them were like businesses that didn't exist. So I'm a very creative person. That's probably my super strength, is being creative. So I come up with these ideas that really don't exist, and then I start businesses. And those are the ones that I start. The reason why I start those is because you can't buy them because they don't exist. But if there is a business that already exists, then it's very stupid pretty much most of the time to start a similar business. You just buy somebody else's for a lot of reasons. But when I was younger, I started lots of businesses that didn't exist. They did really well. And, that's, how I got to where I'm at now. The business I made the absolute most money on was a business I started. It was back in like 2006, 2007, where the market just the economy just got really bad. And gold prices went from like $300 to $700 like within a couple months. And a lot of people needed money. A lot of people lost their jobs. So I started buying gold. That's what I started in 2006, 2007. I made it into a big business, and no one else did it. Like there were like pawn shops, there were jewelry stores, but nobody just had We Buy Gold stores. And I started the first We Buy Gold store probably in the country back then. And I grew that to over 300 stores. So I probably opened most of them, like over 250, 260. And then I started buying some competitors at the time. And I had that business from 2006, 2007, all the way to like 2014 is when I started to wind it down. But gold hit the all-time high at the time in 2011, where it hit almost $1,900 an ounce. Now it's like crazy, surpassed it over this past year. But at the time, that was insane. Like literally a few years earlier, it was $300, and now it's $1,900. So that's probably the year I made the most money. People were just selling their gold like crazy. Yellow gold was out of style. That's what most people had. So people were selling it. People needed money. Lots of people had broken stuff and all kinds of stuff, and it just became a good business. From there, we went from gold, obviously, to everything else that was valuable. So any type of precious metal, diamonds, watches, we got into gift cards and cell phones and really everything. As we grew, we just figured out more stuff you could buy and make money on. And I had over 300 locations all across the country for about a 7-year period.
Now you mentioned, you're a creative person, and of course, that's just like a marriage made in heaven for somebody who wants to start a business, right? They think creatively, they think of new ideas, what the market might like. That makes a lot of sense. What created an interest with you specifically in terms of shifting some of that focus from the creating side of things to the acquisition side, or just finding going concerns that are already up and running? The idea's already been there, they're doing it, and they're making a go of it. What kind of made you interested in focusing on that rather than just continuing to start?
Yeah. So when I was younger, when I was 15, I started my first business, and I had to hustle my ass off. I worked a lot. It was I had times where it was good, I had times where it was better, and I had times where I was struggling because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I went from when I was 15 to when I was like 21, 22, where I had a really good business, and then I had some competitors that were kind of wanting to retire, get out of it, come offer me their business. I wasn't even going after their business. They came to me and are like, "Are you interested in growing and buying my business?" I was like, "Yeah, tell me like how much you want and what's going on." And they gave me price, and I was like, "You know what? It seems like a good deal, but I don't want to come up with all this money up front. Like they want hundreds of thousands of dollars." I was like, "Well, what kind of deal can you give me? What kind of terms can you give me?" And then once I negotiated and we came up with terms that they were interested in doing, and it made sense for me, I bought that business, and I realized I literally grew that was the first business I actually bought off someone, like a really true big business. I was in my early 20s, and I went from making X to, 50% more like overnight, where naturally it would take me years to grow to that because, you're advertising, you're marketing, and you're just growing a little bit at a time. I was like, holy crap. Like this is like a cheat sheet. Like you could grow your business like crazy overnight by just taking somebody else's business. Now, it's very hard to do that if you have to pay cash for it, because now, like, where are you going to come up with hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, depending on the business? And at the time, it wasn't easy to get loans. Now, you have the SBA that is more aggressive with giving loans for new businesses, but still, there's certain types of businesses that it's hard to get a loan for. So once I realized, I focused. I was like, how did this happen? Like, how did this happen to me? And I realized this person was motivated. They did not want to be in that business anymore. This particular person actually had a better opportunity to make even more money. So they were making probably $400,000 or $500,000 a year in that particular business. They had an opportunity to make $1 million a year. So $400,000 or $500,000 a year didn't sound that good for them when they were able to make $1 million, because that was costing them $500,000. They couldn't do both at the same time. So people always ask me, well, why would someone sell a business making $500,000 or a few $100,000 or $1 million or $5 million? Because they have a better opportunity to maybe do more, to maybe make more with something else, and they can't do both at the same time. Or maybe they're just burn out, retire, want to retire. And a lot of times I bought really good deals on people that were getting divorced. Divorce is a big one. So, but the key factor to all this is finding motivated sellers. And there's probably a good dozen ways why people would be motivated. And they'll sell it. Like if I don't want something, I am motivated. I am going to sell it. I don't need it anymore. I don't want it anymore. I don't want to deal with whatever it is. So I started after that, I really focused on that. And the 2-3 years after that, I just went after all of my other competitors and I started buying them all out. And of course, the ones that were the most motivated were the ones that were the easiest to do deals with, because those are the ones that would give you terms. You can still buy stuff off people that are not motivated, but you're going to be paying a lot more. You're not going to get good terms. and it just doesn't make as much sense. So I really, since that time, started targeting motivated sellers. And that's obviously how you do stuff in real estate. There's a lot more people that do that in real estate, and you're not going to buy a good deal off someone in real estate if they're not motivated to sell. So it's the same thing with business. And there's ways that we target motivated sellers, and there's ways that we structure deals to where they're win-wins for everybody, where they get their price, but you get the terms that you want, and it's just everybody wins and gets what they want, and they don't have to deal with their business anymore that they don't want to. And you show them why you're the right person. With business, it's different than real estate, where people care about different things, right? With real estate, people really just care about getting the most money, or the most money up front, or the most money. That's what real estate is. With business, it's totally different. I would say half the people I bought businesses from, or maybe even more, don't necessarily care how much money they get. That's not their main thing. They care, but that's not their main thing. I would say their main thing is they're very prideful in this business. Most businesses I buy, they've owned for definitely over 10 years, but sometimes decades. And it's their baby. They've grown to love this business. Their customers, their employees. And the most important thing to them is to keeping that business in good hands with good, keeping good reviews, making sure the customers are happy, make sure you take care of all their employees. Their employees are probably closer to a lot of these owners than their kids are. They're with them all day, every day. They don't even see their kids that much. So they treat their business like their baby. And if you could show them how, look, I know how to take care of a business. I have all these other employees. They're all happy. I'm going to take care of your employees. I'm going to take care of your customers. That's probably the most important thing to over half the people I buy businesses from that are retiring or, getting to a stage that they don't want it anymore. And if you could show them that you're the right person for that, and then also show them that, look, you're going to be the most fair and give them, a fair price for everybody, then as long as they feel that they're not getting, taken advantage of, they're going to sell it to you. I've literally had people that had businesses that they got higher offers from other people, but sold it to me because I said, look, I'm going to keep your business intact. I'm not going to change the name. I'm going to keep all your employees. And where other people that were in the same industry wanted to buy their business, they wanted to strip their business, tie it into their business, get rid of some of their employees, change some of the stuff that was important to them, change the name that they built for decades. And that they're like, look, I built this my whole life. I don't want it to go away. So you just got to know how to target and what to say to the right people to get them to deal with you, which is really cool about business. And I started learning that when first person sold me their business. I saw what they really cared about when they sold it to me. They cared about me keeping their name. They cared about me keeping their employees. I'm like, in real estate, they don't care about any of that, but in business, that's a big part of why they're going to sell to you and not somebody else. The money is part of it, but it's not as big of a part as most people would think.
So what part of the business acquisition process do you enjoy the most?
I love the negotiations. I love working the deal and then finally getting to the end where everyone's happy. It's a win-win for everybody. And, I see that I'm going to be able to exponentially grow the business I already have, because most of the businesses I buy now are what I call bolt-ons to what I already have. But there are some new businesses every so often that I buy that aren't. Like, I like home services. So I buy home services that I don't already have, but I just kind of add it to home services. But so that would be like a new business. So I love the fact that I could, add more products to my customers that I already have, that I'm able to, lower my cost because they have different vendors that I didn't know about. They get it cheaper, or I could buy bigger bulk now where I can get a better price. That's the fun thing. But at the end of the day, I love it when the person I'm buying it from is smiling. They're happy. They know they got a good deal. And, that's probably the most fun part, just the negotiation and explaining to them, showing somebody why this deal is so good for them and getting them to understand it and sign and get the deal done.
Abraham, one of the things I know that purchasers have to really consider when they're buying a new business, of course, they're attracted to it because it's a going concern, right? It's there, it's making money, and the owner just wants to move on. Nothing has to be recreated. You almost can just leave the thing alone and just let it do what it does. When you get involved in a new business, how active in that business are you? And is there kind of a delicate balance as to if you're buying up a team of people, just letting that team do what they do? You know, how do you kind
Yeah.
of deal with that balance when you come in?
So I'm not very active in any of my businesses. I usually have partners in most of my businesses, and my partner is going to be the one that handles the operations. I'm going to be the one that finds the deal, negotiates the deal, and gets the deal to closing. After that, I'm involved very little. But I introduce everybody. I kind of give them like my thoughts of what I would do. But one of the real important things when I buy a business is that the owner of the business isn't super involved to where if they leave, if they retire, the business is going to take a big hit where people will be like, well, where'd he go? Where'd he go? I don't want to buy a business like that. That makes the business worth a lot less. So most of the businesses I buy, the owner is involved to some degree, but they're involved like in the books, in the financial parts, in the bookkeeping, and they're not really involved in the customer service day-to-day activities to their customers. Although the customers might know them, they're not a crucial part of it to where if they don't see him anymore, it's like, oh my God, where'd he go? This is a different business. So that's a very important part when you're buying businesses to make sure that's the case. So I would either have one of my partners step in and take a big role of the business, or what I prefer to do is to have like the general manager of the business that's already there kind of take charge and now do a little bit more than what he was doing before, and just have my partner, whoever's operating the business or managing the business, just kind of have touch points with that person, multiple times a week, once a month. But we'll definitely have meetings every week. And, we review the financials every single month to see what went up, what went down. We look at our marketing. We see like what we should add or change. But yeah, that's the best thing about buying a business. Like you said, you can go in, everything's already there and it keeps running. And then you could just, over time, I wouldn't change anything right away, but maybe over the next few months or 6 months, kind of see, okay, what can I add to the marketing? What can I add to products? What can I add to, whatever, and then change. But I try to keep every single employee. I try to keep everything as similar as possible. And then after I'm there and people trust me a little bit because they see that I'm on their side and helping them, then I try to change a little bit here or there. And the one thing that's really cool that I do is I go around to all the employees, especially all the, like the manager type employees, the important ones. And I ask them, if this was your business, what would you do? And they give me all kinds of suggestions. Most of them usually don't make sense, but some of them do. And I always make sure that I implement at least one thing that every person tells me. So I make them give me a lot of stuff. But if I could implement one thing that everyone tells me, now they're like, oh, wow, this person cares. This person listens to me. I mean something. And that's something that it goes really far. But again, I have those people run it because they've been running it as long as, they've been there, which they know it way better than me. I know business, but I don't know that particular industry necessarily, or their particular business. They know all their customers. They know all these different things. And then, we learn from each other. And, that's the kind of relationship I like to have with everyone that stays.
Well, what about regrets? Do you have any business acquisition regrets, deals that you?
Oh yeah, there's always regret. There's always regrets. Look, so that's the difference. That's another big difference between buying real estate and buying business. When you buy real estate, you don't really have too many problems. You go inspect it ahead of time. Maybe you think the rehab is going to be 60,000 and maybe it comes in 75,000. It's a little bit of a different thing, but you could go inspect it and you could see every single thing about that property and get a good idea. With business, you're going to do due diligence on the financials, the legal, your reviews, all these different things, their employees. But there's so much stuff that goes to a business that you're not going to be able to see until something comes up, because there's so many different customers. There's so many different deals they made with vendors and employees. And so there's also like things that could come up where the industry might change and you don't realize, and they, maybe the owner knew ahead of, before you. So what I would say is my biggest regrets were in the beginning when I didn't realize how strong creative financing was. And I did pay people a little bit more upfront than I probably should have. So if someone's trying to screw you and trying to trick you into buying their business, which is very possible, they know their business backward and forward, where you only could have a certain amount of time doing due diligence. If they are going to owner finance a big portion of it, like over 50%, they're probably telling you the truth more than likely, because in every single agreement that we have, if they, tell me that this is what's happening and then something changes where that's not the truth, they lose a significant part of what I'm going to owe them, if not everything, if it's, depending on if it's fraudulent or if they just, something, depending on the situation. But when you pay someone too much, they have nothing to lose. They have the money, they're gone. So I very rarely will buy deals now where a seller gets to leave with a substantial, most of the money. So that's one thing I've changed a lot, and I've got it to where now the last 10, 15 years I bought businesses. I very rarely will get someone that lies to me and I get screwed by overpaying or giving them too much, because they have more to lose than I have at this point, because they have. So like people ask me, well, if you're a billionaire, why wouldn't you just pay cash for it if you get a better deal? It's because that gives the opportunity for someone to screw you and get all the money, and then they trick you, and the recourse is very hard, put it like that. Right. So giving them as little as possible, but enough to where they're happy in what they need. I always try to figure out why they need the money. If they're selling something for $1 million, what are you going to do with the $1 million if you get it? And then they're like, oh, I'm just going to invest it and make the last deal. So I bought this trophy company last year, about a year ago. And I bought like 7 since then. In the last 6 years, I bought 7, but I keep buying competitors. So one of the last ones I bought about a year ago, the lady's like, I want this much money for the business. I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do with the money if you get it? They're like, well, 10% of it I need for this. The other 90% is like, I'm going to invest it in this. I'm investing in this. How much money are you going to make on your investments? Well, I'm going to make, 8% on this, 7% on this, 3% on that, 10%, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, if I give you the 10% that you need, and then I could give you the rest of the money and make sure you make whatever you think you're going to make in investments, then you don't really need it all. And, it makes them think, and they're like, they want it all, but like, they don't really need it all. And then I could kind of convince them. There's a million ways to get them happy with understanding that. And then I'm like, well, you're going to have your business as collateral. You're selling me your business for X amount. Unless you're tricking me and it's not worth that amount, you have really good collateral. Like, tell me why you wouldn't want this business unless, am I overpaying? Are you charging me like more than it's worth? Like, now you're making me think like, wait a second, you don't want to keep this business. And then no matter what they say, I have, a counter that makes sense. And of course, that's how I get, them to owner finance so much of it, because I show them they don't really need that money, and I'm going to be able to pay them whatever they think they're going to get anyway, doing whatever other investments. Anyway, so most people are like, yeah, I'm going to get 6%, and I'm like, all right, well, if I paid you 6% interest on the difference, and so, yeah, I would say paying people too much was one of the mistakes I made early on, because people could take advantage of you more. That's probably the biggest thing. And plus you can't buy as much, the less you put down for everything, you could buy more deals.
What about deals that you regret on kind of the other side of the equation?
Not doing enough due diligence.
Well, like deals on businesses or industries where you decided to pass, and then you're like, a couple years later, like, oh man, that blew up, or that industry blew up. Yeah,
that happens too. But here's the thing. I mean, if you were to buy all those deals that ended up blowing up where you made a lot more money, there's probably some that would have gone the other way. And it's a big headache. So you're never going to be perfect. It's impossible. You just got to make the best decision. And whenever I don't buy something and it turns out to be a lot better, whether it's business, real estate, or whatever else it is, doesn't matter, stocks, crypto, I don't care what it is. It's like, you know what, it's easy to say afterwards that you could have done it. But, if I would have done this one, I would have done like these 3 other ones, and these 3 other ones blew up. And then overall, it would have been a wash. I would have, maybe not made as much. But even if I would have made a little bit more, the headache probably wasn't worth it for the bad ones. So you've got to just use your best instincts and best judgment and just not regret it. Like you just got to do it and just know, look, you're going to make mistakes. Nobody doesn't make mistakes. But the worst mistake to make is to buy something and have a headache. 100 times worse than not buying something where you could have made more money. So that's the way I look at it. And that's, from everyone that I've ever seen do it, I think they would agree with me.
So in structuring your business acquisitions, there's a couple of ways to go. One is you can go in and just buy the assets, which includes normally name rights and stuff like that, but you leave the liabilities with the prior owner, and you just acquire the assets. The other option is to go in and actually buy the membership interest of the LLC. But then if there are debts out there, then you're basically assuming those. What's your preferred method?
my preferred method by far is asset purchases. So I'm buying businesses that are making, a couple 100,000 a year to 4, 5, 6, 700,000 a year. That's my typical business I buy. Those types of businesses, there's not enough upside to buy the stock purchase. There's more downside. But like, yeah, if you're buying, major big companies that are doing, a lot bigger numbers, then the stock purchase could be more beneficial. Now, of course, when you're buying as an asset purchase, it also helps you tax purposes. Like the person buying it on an asset purchase, now you get to start all the depreciation, everything else again. So it's much more beneficial for you as a buyer to buy it as an asset purchase. You don't have to worry about the liabilities. But again, as an asset purchase, you can buy every single asset that you want. You could buy, you can take the receivables, you could take the, everything, the name, the whatever. You just don't have to take the liabilities that you don't want to take or we don't know about yet.
So Abraham, let's talk about some of those assets. So if we're structuring this as kind of an asset purchase agreement, every obviously business is a little bit different, and maybe some of the types of assets that they might acquire. But what are some typical important assets that you're after when acquiring a business? I know you're after all of their assets, but what are some of those? What do they look like?
I would say obviously the employees, are a big one. The customers are a big one. The receivables are a big one. The cash in the bank is a big one, and that's pretty negotiable of how you can structure that. The name, some of their vendors, keeping the credit with them to where you could just take over and have the same terms. Those are probably some of the biggest ones. I love taking over receivables and cash that's in the bank. And I can structure that a lot of different ways to where, they'll do it. Because a lot of people are like, well, they want to take the cash in the bank with them. So what I do is I just, instead of paying them $300,000 for the business, if they have $50,000 in the bank, I pay them $350,000 for it. And I structure it to where they're still beneficial and I'm beneficial. I have the cash and I can use some of that cash for closing and for different things. Obviously the numbers are a lot bigger than I said, but that's just to give you an example. So those are probably the most important ones that I try to get in every single deal I buy. Plus, there are a lot of businesses that I buy now where the customers, the people that are selling the business don't really care about keeping everything intact. And if I know when I talk to someone, if they really care about keeping that name and employees and everything intact, and if they don't. Most of them do. But the ones that don't, those are ones that are much easier to buy as an asset and strip the ones that you want and get rid of the ones that you don't. But some people, I bought some businesses from people that are 75, 80 years old, and everyone that works for them is also close to their age, and everybody wants to retire. So like they don't even really want to keep the business. So those types of ones are a lot easier to buy as an asset purchase because they don't really want to keep everything intact. And then I just buy those to bolt onto other businesses, just keep their employees, I mean, not employees, but keep their customers. The customers are probably some of the best assets because without the employees, it's very hard to hire good new employees and they already know everything. So employees, that's probably the best asset. And then, their customers. And then of course, the inventory and accounts receivables and all that come next.
So speaking of, let's just jump ahead and talk about as far as the logistics go of operating these businesses. I mean, you're talking, a significant number of businesses that you've acquired. You mentioned, cash flow, things like that. When you buy a business, what role does, say, a bookkeeper or an accountant play in kind of getting you transitioned over and up and running?
So before I buy it, I'm able to review pretty much financials very well and fast and kind of come up with all the questions I need to ask. So I don't usually have my accountants and bookkeepers help me with the due diligence on the front end. Now, the bigger the business, the more I'll ask them to help. So if I'm buying a business that I'm paying many, many millions of dollars for, then I probably will get a little bit more input. But for the most part, I could handle all that myself, and I could come up with everything that looks weird. I understand, and I could ask them questions, see if it makes sense. But once I buy the business, 100%, they got to take over day one and have the books. I've got to have good P&Ls every single month to see, where the money is going and coming. And I want to see like month over month, and then of course, year over year, I want to see the difference between 2023, 2024. Did like the same month go up or down, or why? What went up as far as my expenses? What went down as far as my sales? And I got to figure out stuff based on that. That's how you figure out everything. So that gets reviewed every single month with every business. And you've got to have up-to-date P&Ls with every business, or else you're just kind of it's like playing Russian roulette if you don't have that. So you've got to, that's very, very important.
So do you have a bookkeeper then that you employ that's their sole job?
I actually have like a couple different ones based on the business. So I have some businesses that I have the same partner with, and I have other businesses I have this other partner with. And I'll use sometimes different bookkeepers because they do all my businesses with this partner and they do all my business with that partner. But I pretty much have two main ones that I use for almost every business. I might have like, one-off one here or there on a different business. But for the most part, I use the same couple based on who I'm partners with or what type of business it is. But I do have one like CPA that at the end of the year, does everything and puts everything together with whoever my bookkeepers are.
Now, when you're kind of working through the process of buying a business, and working through whether this is something you want to ultimately pull the trigger on, we've talked about this. You've used the term a couple times. This what is called due diligence, your investigation into the business.
Mm-hmm.
I know this might change from business to business, but what kind of time do you usually like to plan or build out for to conduct due diligence?
Yeah, so the diligence is going to be based on how much am I paying for the business, how much is the owner going to be financing, and is it a stock purchase or is it a asset purchase? So on a stock purchase, the due diligence is always going to be a lot more. That's why another reason why I prefer asset businesses. I don't have to do as much due diligence. But if I'm getting a big chunk owner finance, like 90%, 80%, my due diligence is a lot smaller because I don't need to have it as good, because if this person lies to me or screws me and does something that we didn't agree to, or they told me something that didn't happen, they're going to lose their 80% or 90%. So I don't have to do that much due diligence. But if I'm giving someone a substantial amount up front, whether it's my own money or whether it's, I'm borrowing the money and I'm responsible for it, or if I have partners putting the money up, I'm going to do more due diligence because there's more to lose. So that all kind of takes a lot. And also, if it's an industry that I know very well, I could do the due diligence a lot faster, and I don't have to spend as much time on it because I know it very well. But if it's an industry that I've never really been into or something I don't know much about, I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time. I'm going to have to get some people that know that industry to help me, just because, every business, the numbers are a little different. Like the cost of goods, the cost, all these different things are different based on the industry. So if it's an industry I'm not really good on, I'm going to find someone that knows that industry well, a friend of mine, and then I'm going to do more due diligence with them, showing me that stuff. So all that kind of takes account into how much due diligence I do. But what I would suggest is, if you're not really good at it, always hire an accountant, always hire an attorney to do all the diligence for you. If you've done this a bunch and you feel comfortable, then you can do it all yourself, or maybe do half and half. But if you're not sure about something, do as much due diligence as you need and take as long as you need, because the worst thing you can do is to rush into something, do something wrong, and then regret it later.
So a few things that you probably will want to put in place for the protection of the business as a going concern would be to make sure that especially if it's a retail space, you want to make sure that the prior owner is not going to go across the street and open up a shop. So what are some of the different, what we call covenants that you put in place to make sure that you can operate?
There's lots of covenants, reps and warranties, and non-competes and all that type of stuff. Right. We put into play. Again, it's going to depend on the business, and I'm going to look at the owner too. Is this owner like 80 years old and I know they're not going to open something else, or are they 40, 50, or 30, whatever, to where they're definitely going to be doing some other types of business. So I'm going to be more aggressive with it if I think that there's a possibility that they're going to still do it. Is this person moving out of the country, moving out of state? Are they, I'm always going to ask the seller, what's your plans after you sell? What's your next thing? Do you already have something in place? And I kind of, based on that, figure out what needs to, but it's way more important to be on the safe side. So like, if you're not sure, put as much stuff in there as you need, but they should never be, hiring any of your employees, taking any of your customers, being in the same industry within, a certain radius at least. And then, they also need you got to know, like, look, whatever deals that they promise people that they didn't tell us, they're responsible for. Like, for instance, if I ask, what deal did you make with all the employees? What deal did you make with all the vendors? With your customers? How much discount are you giving? If they're saying, look, they promised this customer 10% off, and then all of a sudden the customer comes to me like, no, they promised you 30% off, I'm going to make them responsible for the other 20%, because they didn't tell me that ahead of time. With employees, if they said, look, if this person hits certain goals, they're going to make an extra $50,000 or $100,000 a year, and they don't tell me that in writing, then they're going to be responsible for it. So anything that they have deals that I don't know about with vendors, employees, customers, anything other than a normal type of deal, they have to write that all in there. And anything that is not written in there that comes to a surprise for me, I'm going to make them responsible for that as well.
Yeah. How do you think, I've seen this become an issue in kind of some of these retail businesses. You mentioned like the axe throwing or the putt golf, industries where it's not uncommon to have gift cards that are outstanding and things like that. How do you plan for that in the purchase of a business like that?
Yeah, so that's all part of the negotiation. So in a lot of my entertainment, we do a ton of Groupons, and we sometimes, let's say we have $20,000 in Groupons sold in a particular month. Sometimes only half of them get actually used. Sometimes the other half never ever get used. So how do you know if you have gift cards out? Because you can do gift cards as well. How do you know what percent are going to be used? So you go in ahead of time. You're like, look, here's the historical history of all the gift cards I've ever sold or whatever else, similar to gift cards, a Groupon, whatever, discounts that usually get claimed. Usually it's 80% or 50%. And then you negotiate what credit you should get based on that. And, if they just totally lie to you and it's way different, then that would be in one of the contracts, the covenants and restrictions. But for the most part, they're pretty honest. And you just figure, okay, look, you've sold 100,000, you already got that money. Those 100,000 hasn't come in. They're telling me 70,000 will probably come in. So should I get credit for all 70 or maybe 60 or 50 or whatever it is? We just work it out, and that's part of the negotiation.
Yeah. Important though to know to ask going in, right?
Very, very important. Yeah. A lot of industries have a ton of stuff out. In our industry, in my entertainment industries, we have a ton of money out all the time that hasn't been claimed yet. So that should definitely be part of it. And again, there's not really a right or wrong of what you should get or not get, but it's really good if you can get that's another way you could buy a business with putting down a lot less money. Look, they already have that $100,000 in gift cards. Give me $70,000 of credit for it. That's $70,000 toward the purchase price. I don't have to pay them anymore. That's like an incredible way to come up with a lot less money. So, but yeah, that's a very important part. A lot of people don't think about. There's so many things you don't think about. And if you don't know or you haven't done this before, you should ask people that have done it, and especially attorneys, to read over the contracts and give you some suggestions.
So kind of in that same vein, if you're, we always talk in the real estate world about how important it is to find mentors in the space that have done these things, that know what they're doing, and the kind of people you can partner with to learn from and do deals from. You meet somebody like that, and they're looking, they maybe they heard this podcast and they're thinking, man, this sounds great. I want to, real estate's tired right now. I want to go in and invest in businesses. If you had one piece of advice to give that kind of person, what are you telling them?
Yeah, make sure you find someone to learn from, whether it's someone that you just know, a friend of yours, a parent, whatever relative, or if it's someone that does this and teaches people. It doesn't matter, but you've got to learn from someone that's done it, or else you're going to make a lot of mistakes. It's going to cost you way more than whatever advice you can get for free or advice that you have to pay for. So the one thing I've learned is definitely don't try to figure stuff out on your own. Make sure that you get the advice from somebody else that's already gone through it.
Well, Abraham, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Really good information. Why don't you tell our listeners how they can find and connect with you?
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to connect with me is if you go on YouTube, it's Abraham Gray, Gray. That's my channel. Of course, Instagram, it's Abraham Gray Official. And then, of course, on Facebook, Abraham Gray. Those are probably the best ways. If you have deals, I'll tell you, my email address. You can email me stuff. And, I buy a lot of real estate. I buy a lot of business. And, if there's anything else you connect with me, I'll give you the information you need to contact me however you want. And, hopefully we could do business together.
All right. Really good information, Abraham. Let's do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. With that, everybody, that is our show. Make sure to join us next week. We'll see you next time.
Have a good day, everyone.